We are back here with another episode. The San Francisco 49ers just finished up day 2 of training camp. This one was the first day open in the media, or first day open away from the media, open for everybody. I was in attendance. So let's break down what I saw, answer some of your questions, and move forward with the rest of training camp that is going to happen here for the next 2 weeks. First of all, thank you guys all who subscribed to the coverage of training camp over the last few weeks. In general, the guys who have always kind of followed along for the last few years, that's something I always appreciate. But let's definitely get into training camp now here for the 49ers. Starting off, we'll go position by position. I'll give you my thoughts on how kind of things have unraveled. And let's start off, obviously, with the most important position and one that maybe has not seen as much turmoil around it as in recent years. And obviously, that's the quarterback position. When we talk about the quarterback position in training camp for the 49ers, that's been the position under the most scrutiny, you know, in years past. What do I mean by that? Well, the 49ers obviously have had a bit of a quarterback battle. Last offseason, there were three guys really competing, getting those number one reps. Brock Purdy was the clear starter. He was injured, though. You didn't really see as much of Brock Purdy. He was, he had that 2 days on, 1 day off kind of plan the year before. Trey Lance was in there, but it was a bit of a competition. And so, you understand my gist. There was a bit of a difference this year with Brock Purdy being the unquestioned starter. Instead, it was more so about the backup situation. And the Niners are allowing these backups to compete for the number 2 spot. I initially thought maybe Josh Dobbs has that number 2 spot locked up just because of the contract that he was given. But Brandon Allen also got $700,000 guaranteed, and he was the guy who got a majority of the number 2 reps on at the quarterback position on Thursday. That one was an intriguing one because how was that battle going to happen? How were they going to divvy up the quarterback reps? Because there were 4 healthy bodies with Tanner Mordecai there as well. Well, Brandon Allen got a majority of the 2 reps, and Brandon Allen looked better. If I'm being honest, Brandon Allen was the guy who had the better day of the quarterbacks. He looked fairly good. He had a couple of nice throws. Had one Taylor that was one of the top throws of the day. One over the middle where Taylor, he outstretched. He was able to make a catch. He had one over the middle to Deebo Samuel in traffic. That was a pretty nice ball as well. Allen had one poor throw early on, a crossbody one. He threw it in essentially in double coverage, was broken up and incomplete. But apart from that, he had a pretty solid day. Again, you understand his limitations, but overall, Brandon Allen, I thought, was comfortably the number 2 quarterback on the day. Josh Dobbs, on the other hand, he had split reps between the 2s and the 3s, and he was a guy who you could understand some of it, but it wasn't the strongest day for Josh Dobbs. A lot of shorter throws. And then of the throws, of substance, he had an interception on a ball deep looking for Jawan Jennings. He underthrew him a bit. It's a ball that kind of died in the air a little bit. Darrell Luter was able to get it. He had good coverage on the play as well, caught the underthrown ball. He ended up getting the interception. And so that was one of the deep balls. He had another ball on an out route to Danny Gray that was broken up. He had a couple of balls, where you'd hope it was in a bit of a different location. Just maybe, a little bit more of a shaky day for Josh Dobbs overall. And so he had a bad overthrow as well on a deeper pass. That one wasn't really going to any receiver. And so there were a couple of shaky moments. Again, Dobbs is acquainting himself with the playbook, things like that. It's his first offseason, but this might be more of a competition for QB2 than people think. I do want to talk about Brock Purdy, though. I do want to talk about Brock Purdy because I know he's the unquestioned starter. There really isn't much Brock Purdy needs to prove. I thought Brock Purdy was really sharp, though, on Thursday. He had one of the better days of a quarterback that I've seen at training camp, when I've been covering the 49ers. And that's saying something. He was sharp. He was accurate, man. He hit a lot of his throws. He hit throws in the short, intermediate, wherever he was tasked to throw. He had a lot of throws. He had a couple of tight window ones. He really got in a groove towards the end of the first team session, and in the second team session especially. Obviously, no Brandon Ayuk, no Ricky Pearsall. The top receiver of the day was Deebo Samuel, who had himself a nice day. I'll talk about him more later. But Purdy, Samuel, they got into a bit of a connection. They were able to connect on a few passes. Purdy was, he was just throwing the ball around a good amount. He obviously has the top arsenal of weapons. George Kittle was there. Kyle Juszczyk was there. Christian McCaffrey was there. Deebo Samuel was there. You definitely had a couple of good guys that Brock Purdy was throwing to, but he was really sharp. It's something that you want to see from the starting quarterback, to begin camp. He's setting the right tone starting off camp. I was really impressed with Brock Purdy today. Real quick, getting into some of the comments. Want to thank 49ers Throwback. Thank you for tuning in as always. We appreciate it. Captain Niner, thank you as well for tuning in at the beginning of the show. Ken, I was at training camp today. We'll be there for a majority of the days. Only we'll miss next weekend. Apart from that, we'll be there, though, at every 49er practice, and we'll go live after the practices. So stay tuned here on the show. Does Deebo still suck versus man? I will talk about Deebo in a little bit. Make sure you put the questions down, as 49ers Throwback says. And my co-host here, Marco, appreciate you for tuning in. All right, let's move on, though, to the running backs. Running backs is an interesting position because there was an injury we talked about yesterday. Me and Marco were live yesterday. We talked about the Isaac Guerendo injury. Guerendo suffered a hamstring injury, might have been a hyperextension of the knee as well. And so he will be out probably for this whole week, maybe longer, as the 49ers kind of figure out what the best thing is for him moving forward. Guerendo, he was not at practice today. He probably won't be at practice tomorrow to end the week. And so there are, other running backs obviously on the roster, a lot of guys that should be in the rotation this year, starting with Christian McCaffrey. I don't believe McCaffrey practiced yesterday. So Christian McCaffrey, he was in there, and he looked good. He looks fresh. He looks ready to go. And he's a guy who is kind of practiced at 100%. He's one of those tone setters as well for the offense. And that's always a good sign because that's the standard when you're going after Christian McCaffrey. That's what you kind of have to focus on. McCaffrey was 100%. He had a really nice run, one of those cutback runs that I thought, that was one of the better runs of the day. He's there. He did Christian McCaffrey type things. Again, tough to gauge the running game really because there's no pads. And so when there's no pads, defensive line has a bigger advantage against the offensive line. Tough to really get traction. You don't really know how these guys are going to fare without pads, no tackling, and things like that. Elijah Mitchell was there as the number 2. I thought Mitchell, he moved pretty fluidly as well. Again, similar. It's tough to gauge without pads, but the way that they move is kind of the way that I'm kind of judging. Do they look as they've looked in the past? Do they look fresher? What has kind of changed with their body and things like that? I thought Elijah Mitchell, he looked solid. He got the 49ers rotated the reps a lot. It was McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, and they had all three of those guys worked within the first and second team and third team even. They were rotating a lot. It wasn't really a set order or anything like that. They got fairly equal reps. I thought Mitchell looked fresh as well. He had a couple of nice runs. He had one run up the right side that went up the sideline for a good gain. And this is what you want. You want these running backs to be healthy. You want the top 3 especially to look like they're ready for, the regular season. I thought Jordan Mason also looked really good. Jordan Mason's a guy who a lot of people are talking about, hoping that he gets more opportunity. That's something that a lot of people have said over the last 2 off seasons. I thought he looked really good on day 1. Mason was in the backfield, caught 2 different passes. I believe one from Brandon Allen, forget who threw the other one. He caught both of his passes. He's a guy who runs hard. He's a guy who can move well at his size. He can move well when it comes to change of direction. The big question for Mason was pass protection. That's the reason he probably hasn't gotten on the field as much. Not really many pass protection drills or anything like that I saw, at least, or that I could gauge much of. But he caught 2 passes, the 2 that were thrown his way, and he had one of the best runs of the day. Again, I think if Mason can get more opportunity, he could really show what he's able to do. To me, that's something that I want to see. He's improving. He's got the skills as a pass catcher as well. He's got to be able to put it all together. I thought he had one of the better days as well. A good day for the running backs. Hard to gauge maybe overall how the day is for the running game, but a good day for the running backs and those top three. One thing I wanted to note, though, with this group, no Isaac Garendo. I was curious to see, does a guy like Cody Schrader, the undrafted free agent, kind of get in there? He was he didn't get as many reps as I thought he would. Patrick Taylor, the free agent signing from the Green Bay Packers, was the fourth in the pecking order. He got a lot of the third team opportunities. Cody Schrader was in and out. He didn't really get much run. He was the fifth string guy, and the Niners relied mainly on their top three more often than not. And so there was not much opportunity for Cody Schrader during team drills for him to showcase his skills. Curious to see if that changes throughout camp. But right now, didn't really see it much at all from Cody Schrader for me to be able to say something about him. Let's move on, though, to the wide receivers. The wide receivers, a position that's missing a couple of players. Brandon Ayuk holding out or holding in, I guess, and Ricky Pearsall, who I saw on the side today. He was running. He's on the non-football injury list, the NFI list, due to a hamstring injury. So he's out as well. But when you talk about that receiver group, with those two out, the focus was on Deebo Samuel. That Deebo Samuel looked really good today as well. Again, Deebo Samuel, everybody knows kind of the type of player you're getting. You're getting a physical player, a guy who works really well after the catch, a guy who does struggle to separate at times. Not the best separator, maybe not the best route runner, but you know what you're getting in Deebo Samuel. You hope for the freshest version, a guy who's in shape. Deebo Samuel came into minicamp. He looked like he was in shape. He looked like, he was motivated ahead of what's going to be a big year for him. I thought the same was there for training camp. He was the top receiver on Thursday. He got a lot of volume. He caught every single pass, I believe, thrown his way. And some were more in traffic, maybe not as much separation as you'd like on certain routes, but I thought his hands were really good on Thursday. He was able to catch a couple of passes in traffic. He was able to, get a couple of tight window balls. He developed a rapport with both Brock Purdy and Brandon Allen. Deebo Samuel was the standout receiver of the day overall for me. He got a lot of volume. He was able to make a couple of plays. It was, Deebo Samuel-esque with a number of different routes that he had to run, in breakers, breaking out routes, some type of post route or so that I'd like to call it. He had a couple of different things in his repertoire, working the intermediate portion of the field that he was able to kind of get to. Now, other than that, I really, really liked, I really, really liked Jacob Cowing. Fifth-round rookie. It was unexpected maybe what you'd see from Jacob Cowing going into training camp. Why? Because you had a lot of receivers, didn't know what the status was for Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall. You had receivers ahead of him, and then you had the guys competing at the bottom of the order, or at the bottom of the roster looking for a roster spot. You talk about Ronnie Bell. You talk about Tay Martin. You talk about Danny Gray. You talk about some of those guys. There's a lot of guys competing for that spot. But Jacob Cowing, I believe he worked pretty much exclusively with the second team. He was the slot receiver. He really impressed me as well. I was impressed by his film. Don't get me wrong. This is not the first time I've watched Jacob Cowing. I know what kind of player he is. But he looked maybe a little bigger than I thought initially, especially when you look at him next to Trent Taylor. He looks a little bigger than you'd thought. Cowing, though, he moves with just such fluidity. That's the big thing about him. You put the ball in his hands in space, he's going to be able to make plays for you because of the way he moves. He played a little bit more physical than his size might indicate back in college. The question is, would the 49ers be able to utilize a player like that, knowing the blocking requirements and things that they ask of their receivers? He has a similar build to Ray McLeod. You didn't see McLeod maybe on the field as much, but from what we've seen so far, Cowing, good hands, and he's able to make plays with the ball in his hands. That's something that I'm really intrigued about by Jacob Cowing. Now, the role in year one might not necessarily be there. You obviously have the three top receivers locked up. Expect Brandon Ayuk to get an extension. Deebo Samuel's here for a year more. And then you also have Jawan Jennings. But in year two, in year three, that's where you might see Cowing get a bigger role in the 49ers offense. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall is still there, but he's a guy who you definitely want to see if you can get opportunities for, if you giving somebody else a breather or whatever it might be. He's a guy who I'm definitely interested in. A very good day for Jacob Cowing. He got a lot of volume as well. he's definitely on my stock up heading into, the rest of the week. One other portion, punt returns. Jacob Cowing was a part of the group. It was Cowing, it was Ronnie Bell, and it was Trent Taylor. Remember the 49ers philosophy when it comes to, the return game. They usually like a guy who also can carve out a role, outside of special teams. Don't really like to waste a spot only for a special teamer outside of their three specialists. Cowing is in a good spot to fill that role. Why? Because not only does he fit the mold of a returner with his skill set, be it punt return or kick return, he can also take up a roster spot as a receiver and be a quality receiver for you as that number 5 receiver or number 6 receiver or whatever it might be. That's something that I'm intrigued by. I think he's got a better shot to make the roster than Trent Taylor and Ronnie Bell because of that reason. And so if the 49ers are looking for a guy who can fill multiple roles, I think Callan could be that guy. Still has to prove consistency and things like that in the return game. Obviously, that'll come as training camp goes along. But like I said, good day one for Jacob Cowing. Elsewhere at the receiver position, talked about Debo, talked about, obviously, Cowing. I saw a question about TO2. I'm assuming this is Tariq Owens. I did not see much of Tariq Owens in team drills. He did not get many reps. It was intriguing because the 49ers, they definitely did rotate a lot, but some of the guys at the very bottom of the rotation didn't really get in there as much. That was something that I kind of noticed. It was more so Chris Conley, who was the top outside receiver alongside Debo Samuel. And then with the second team, Danny Gray rotated in, Ronnie Bell rotated in. Those guys were the two outside guys, Cowling more so in the slot. Jawan Jennings, obviously, in the slot with the top team. Those were the guys who I mainly saw in the rotation. Conley involved. Obviously, he's got the speed threat. He was kind of playing in Ayuk's role. And so that's kind of how I envision the receivers. Now, remember, what did I say about receivers yesterday and something that I mentioned in my article today? I think the 49ers are only going to carry 5 receivers on this 53-man roster. I think if you're looking to save spots and put it elsewhere, and try and maneuver through this roster, you're only going to carry your top 5 receivers because they're talented enough to where you don't really need more. If you're thinking about a core of Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, Jawan Jennings, Jacob Cowling, and Ricky Pearsall, assuming they're all healthy, I think that's a really good receiver core. There's no need to add a 6th guy like a Ronnie Bell or, a Tay Martin or a Chris Conley, whereas you can have them on the practice squad, do what they did last year, call a receiver up pretty much every single week, and go from there. That's my prediction, and I think that so far from what I've seen kind of helps or kind of goes along with that prediction. Going back to some of these comments, a lot of people talking about Jordan Mason. I see this. Ronnie Bell muffing some punts today. He was the one guy who I think struggled a little bit with the punt return. I believe he muffed 2 punts from what I saw. Not the best sign. This is punts against air. It's not really with the defense coming on you. You wanna definitely field better. Not the best day for Ronnie Bell in the punt return game. He had some of those issues last year. Maybe that factors in to the competition overall. Now, going to the tight end position, this is one where I think there wasn't really as much as you'd expect to kind of take away from on this day. I was trying to pay attention to the rotations and things like that. Didn't get as much as I wanted to. George Kittle, though, was back in the action. Not sure that he was there yesterday. It seemed like Eric Sober ran mainly with the ones. Kittle was back in the action. He was with the top offense. Another good sign where all of the stars are back and they're playing. That's something where you saw a couple of guys take days off or different people take days off on different days. Everybody was there for the 49ers that was expected to be there. That I thought was a really good sign because the stars played like the stars were supposed to play on Thursday. And so looking at the tight ends behind George Kittle, you do have Cam Latu, Braden Willis, you have Sober, you have Logan Thomas, you have Jake Tonjes. You have a lot of different options. And I thought the 49ers, they rotated a lot. I think the big play of the day, if you were talking about tight end, was one of these balls up the seam to Braden Willis. Willis obviously ran a solid route. It was just a really good play call and a really good ball. That was the main deep catch or really catch by a tight end in general. Thought Jake Tonjes had a solid catch as well. He's kind of like an underrated guy, but everybody's kind of rotating in this room. There wasn't really somebody that established himself more than the others. Willis, I'd say, would have the best catch. That probably puts him a little ahead maybe of the remaining crew. But if you're looking at the reps, a guy like Sober, I think, has gotten a good amount of reps. Kittle's doing his job of kind of hyping everybody up. That's something I saw. Logan Thomas, he was a guy who a lot of people have mentioned. I think Logan Thomas is still kind of working his way in. I did not see him as much in the team drills as I'd expect with the top offenses. I did see him. He caught one ball kind of midway through the session. Logan Thomas, we'll see what his chance is to make the roster, how he kind of acclimates throughout the rest of camp. He's a guy, though, who I'm going to keep my eye on because I did not see much of him when I expected to see more as him being a potential tight end 2 today. And so I think this group is still fairly wide open. I think if you're involving the 4 spots, especially if you take away roster politics and you don't have to guarantee a spot to both Cam Latu and Braden Willis, where there's a true competition. I'll be curious to see how this room ultimately kind of comes together, because right now I think it is wide open behind George Kittle. Offensive line, I thought, was intriguing. Offensive line, that's a position where you expect the 5 starters to be the 5 starters. There is a competition at right guard, but there's obviously no Trent Williams right now. Williams, doing his holdout right now, I guess, as he hopes for a new contract. Doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his current contract with 3 years remaining. And so Jalen Moore is the starting left tackle. You've got Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Spencer Burford, and Colton McKivitz. But there are a couple of things that we have to address with the offensive line. One, Spencer Burford. All of his reps, I believe, came with the ones today. That's something intriguing because the 49ers, it seems like right now at that right guard competition, they really like Spencer Burford. The second part, if Spencer Burford's getting the ones, what happened to John Feliciano? Feliciano was rotated a lot. He played at right guard with the 2s. He played at left guard with the 2s. He also played at center. And that was with both the 1s and the 2s. Feliciano is the guy who I think is the wild card. And I've kind of hinted at this in a couple of my articles and also on some live streams. Marco's also hinted at it. I don't know if Jake Brendel's spot is solidified on this roster right now. Brendel's coming back from knee issues. He had a couple of knee issues. He missed minicamp because of it. Seems like he's all good to go. He was a full go yesterday, a full go today. But there seems to be a bit of a rotation over at center. Feliciano got first-team reps at center with Burford working right next to him. And then Brendel also got a good amount of first-team reps. I'd say Brendel still got more. But this is something I'm going to monitor. Are they slowly working Brendel back from his injury? Is that the reason? Or is this truly a competition? Because if it's a competition, then that's something to definitely keep in mind for later, because that center position might be where Feliciano ultimately sticks. To me, I think this offseason is important, where the 49ers really need to find their top 5 offensive linemen. If Feliciano at center provides them their best 5 alignment, then that's something that you kind of have to look forward to. But that's kind of the biggest talking point. I don't think right guard right now is the bigger talking point. I think it's center, because center is an extremely important position in this, in this offense. We know John Feliciano has a ton of experience at center. He played it most recently with the New York Giants. That's a position that he's played before. And so you might see that competition right now, because the Niners can move off Brendel. They can save some money, obviously it being a post-stream first cut and things like that. But more importantly, you're going to try and find your best alignment. Seems right now Brendel is still, going to be that center. And so that's where that right guard picture gets curious, or a little bit murky. But I will definitely be looking to see if that's a competition. The third guy of the picture at right guard, Dominic Puny. Where does he fit in? He's played primarily right guard. He played with the second team and the third team offense. It seems like the 49ers are working him into his first training camp. He didn't really move much. He was with the second team for the most part of the day. Feliciano worked alongside him at center sometimes, at left guard, or he worked in place of Puny at right guard. And so there was a lot of different mix-ups there. But Puny, he stayed pretty rock solid over at at right guard. That was something. Some other notes. I believe it was Brandon Parker Chris Hubbard, who had worked at right tackle, with the second team offense. And then also Jalen Moore, like I said, with the first team offense at left tackle. This is not necessarily the offensive line that you want, for a majority of training camp. I'll say the defensive line definitely had the better day compared to the offensive line when it came to day one. Again, no Pats. Tough to really gauge offensive line, defensive line play. Just know that a lot of defensive linemen were in the backfield here on day one, getting pressure or stopping plays in the run game, things like that. One thing I do want to note, the 49ers did have Jarrett Kingston play at tackle, right tackle, with the second team at one stage today. Kingston was a sixth round pick. I didn't predict him to make the roster, but the 49ers are trying a couple of different things. It seems like they may want to have a bit more of a competition at that, at that right tackle spot, the backup right tackle spot where they usually, or at least last year they had Matt Pryor. This year, Chris Hubbard they signed. You have Brandon Parker as well as tackle depth, but they might be looking to add more and at least having some competition. So that's something that I'm going to look at. Does that happen more? Because Kingston has solid measurables. The tape, I'm not exactly sure. He played at USC. The expectation was he was going to be an interior offensive lineman, maybe even at center, but he's playing at tackle, and so that's something that I think will be intriguing. Is it something the Niners are just trying, just in general? Given the way that his measurables indicate that he'd be an interior offensive lineman, or is it just purely out of they need some bodies to play there just for reps? I'm not sure. But that's something that I saw. Jarrett Kingston, he was in there at right tackle at some portion of practice. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line. There's a bit of a shakeup, right? No Ark Armstead anymore. Malik Collins was the starter, at least in walkthroughs and in team drills. He was the starter at defensive tackle, not Jordan Elliott, indicating maybe where the Niners stand at the moment. Even in the base package, Malik Collins was the guy that they went for. Him and Javon Hargrave, they were the two interior guys. Nick Bosa, and then Leonard Floyd was the starter in walkthroughs. Floyd did get injured yesterday, some cramp-related thing, as Marco said. Marco said when we were live yesterday, it was cramp-related for Leonard Floyd. He did not participate in team drills today. So he did not participate, in team drills. And so with him out, Yetur Gross-Matos, who played with the second team in walkthrough, he got elevated. But let's break it all down first. Interior. Malik Collins got the nod over Jordan Elliott. I want to say this. Both guys look pretty big. Malik Collins looks like, he looks the part of an interior defensive lineman. You can understand if he's got the power that he shows on tape at that frame, it's going to be for a pretty nice pass rusher. Jordan Elliott's upper body is ridiculous. He looks like a DJ Jones. He looks like a DJ Jones. And so the question is, does he have that athleticism? If he does, he should be able to stick as a run defender, as he has in Cleveland for the past few years, as a pretty capable player at that position. My question with this group, do they switch it up a little bit because Jordan Elliott is the better run defender that suits you more on base packages, or is Malik Collins going to be more of a bona fide starter for the 49ers and maybe even more of a 3-down option? We'll see how it plays out. Right now, Collins got more of the run than Elliott. On the outside, on the edge, Nick Bosa obviously started. He played a lot today. That was a good sign. Like I said, Leonard Floyd in walkthroughs, he was the guy opposite of Nick Bosa, indicates where the Niners are thinking right now. But Yetur Gross-Matos got a lot of reps with the top defense, and that was because no Leonard Floyd in team drills, and so a good amount of run for Yetur Gross-Matos. But in walkthroughs with Floyd there, Gross-Matos was lined up opposite Robert Beal with the second team defense. With a lot of those young guys, the 49ers usually play them on the third team initially, play a veteran, maybe like an Austin Bryant on the second team, and see how those, the younger guys kind of acclimate and how they can kind of build themselves up the depth chart. That's not the case with Robert Beal. Robert Beal he's already on the second team. I think that indicates how the 49ers think of him. I think they think of him a little higher than they might think of some of the other guys. I think that this increases his chance to potentially make the roster. I already had him making it, but he could be that fourth edge rusher for the 49ers, and that's something that I think will be a good test. Can Robert Beal be that guy? This year, can he step up and play 20% of the snaps? Can he be a solid pass rusher for the 49ers? They clearly saw something in him when they drafted him out of Georgia in the 5th round last year. Can he improve on that? Can he be that guy this year? That's the question. Among the backups for the defensive line, though, you did see Kevin Givens and Jordan Elliott work with the second team. Behind them, it was guys like T.Y. McGill. There's a lot of bodies at the defensive line position. My question: how many are they going to carry this year? Is it going to be the normal 10, maybe even 11? I don't think so. I think they carry 9 this year. I could even see them making an argument to carry 8, having 4 edge rushers and 4 defensive tackles. But I think that 9 is a sweet spot. This is a position I'm going to continue to kind of monitor, see how certain players develop, see how some of those guys on the bubble kind of go and work about it. But this was a solid group here on day 2. All right, let's go forward. Let's talk about the linebackers. This is another group, missing a guy. Obviously, no Dre Greenlaw, but also Demetrius Flanagan-Fouts. He had missed today's practice. He got injured yesterday, did not return. Demetrius Flanagan-Fouts is out. That means that there's a spot with that base package that the 49ers were missing. You've got Fred Warner, you've got Devondre Campbell, who's going to be the number 3 guy. And the answer was D. Winters. Well, Curtis Robinson got the spot in walkthroughs. He was the guy who kind of got a lot of the reps. D. Winters rotated in. But when it came to team drills, D. Winters was the guy who the 49ers kind of relied upon. As I said, he was the guy who the 49ers kind of relied upon in team drills. He had a lot of the reps in the base package with the number 1s in team drills after Robinson was the one who got the opportunity in the walkthroughs. And so that's something that I'm going to monitor because we've heard a lot of praise about D. Winters. Fred Warner praised him. You hear praise from the defensive coordinator and the head coach. And so he's a guy who a lot of people, it seems like, are expecting to make a step this year. Can he do it? He's getting the opportunity to do so. And so he's a guy who I'm going to watch. But, with the ones being Warner and also Devondre Campbell, you saw a lot of action with D. Winters, Jalen Graham, and then also Curtis Robinson with the 2s. Seems like Graham might be playing more of a mic role, and so that's where he might be a little bit more of a backup. He's a bigger, lengthier kind of guy, a lengthier linebacker. Winters obviously more of a smaller type, and so we'll see how the linebacker rotation goes. Curious to see how many they also carry here because you have Dre Greenlaw. He could go on the physically unable to perform list, miss the first 4 games. He's expected to miss a couple of games after, the Achilles injury. And so I want to see when Demetrius Flanagan-Fouts does come back, where does he slot in the rotation? Does D. Winters, does he take over that spot? And how does he kind of perform with the opportunity that he's received? But going about the group, Fred Warner set the tone today. I mean, he's a guy who always plays with energy. He was a guy who was all around the football today in the run game. Got near the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage for a couple of plays. He's a guy who always hypes the team up, sets the tone for the defense. Did that again today. He was the heartbeat as usual of the defense. Good stuff from him. Linebackers though, guys to watch. Warner obviously did great. D. Winters is the guy who I'd kind of keep my eye on over the remainder of training camp. Moving on from the linebacker position, we got cornerbacks, and make sure you guys drop your questions. I'm definitely going to be down to answer any questions after kind of this position-to-position run through. Just want to get through all of the positions, tell you guys my initial thoughts from what I saw, and what to look forward to going forward. Cornerback was one where we definitely saw a lot of moving. Charvarius Ward, Diamondo Lenore, those were the 2 starters in the base package, where you have 2 cornerbacks. That was expected. Those were the 2 starters in the base package. What happens when they go to nickel? Well, it was the same as yesterday. Isaac Yiadom ended up being the starter on the outside. They kicked Diamondo Lenore to the inside. That was the 3 cornerback setup with Ward and Yiadom as the outside guys, Lenore in the nickel. That's the setup that that the 49ers kind of put out for a majority of the day. Yiadom worked exclusively with the number 1, with the number 1 defense, and he seems like the favorite right now to be that 3rd starter for the 49ers at cornerback. The other option, Renardo Green, worked with the second team, primarily worked in the slot today. And so Green, he's obviously getting acclimated. He's kind of still working about working about getting his spot in the depth chart and things like that. We'll see if he can get into those number one reps later in training camp. At cornerback, we've seen a couple of these situations before where at first a veteran kind of takes over before the rookie or the young guy kind of gets more opportunity. But Yadam's a guy who's deserving of a starting spot as well. He's a guy who had a couple of nice cover plays on the day. That's something where you want to monitor. Does Green even crack into the rotation to get first team reps? Is he a guy more for 25? What position do the Niners want him to play? He was majority in the slot today. We'll see if he gets more outside reps later. But for now, Renardo Green primarily working with the second team. Next to Renardo Green, with the second team defense, Ambry Thomas was there. You also saw Daryl Luter, Rock Yassin. You saw those guys kind of getting some reps in with the cornerback position as well. Luter, he had one of the plays of the day. He got an interception working against Juwan Jennings on the outside. Luter, Thomas, and Rock Yassin all played on the outside today. That's a part of why Green was on the inside. And, there's a competition, ongoing competition. There's likely an open spot available for the 49ers at cornerback. You've got a lot of long, lanky corners, guys that can be guys that kind of fit the mold of what they want with that press man style. That'll be something to definitely watch going forward. But at the moment, there's a competition at corner, and they've got a lot of opportunity here. Samuel Womack, was also in the mix on the outside. I think Samuel Womack, he was a guy who also had a nice PBU, broke up a Josh Dobbs pass intended for Danny Gray on the sidelines as well. So those guys, those are the guys who you're kind of thinking about in the backup group with the mix, in the mix with the backup group at cornerback. Renardo Green on the inside, Chase Lucas, a guy who they signed, a guy who has more special teams experience. He's on the inside, and then the other four more so on the outside as well. Sweet. All right. That's more so about the cornerbacks. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on them because that's just one of the more one of the positions with a lot of competition going on about it. But that's it about the cornerbacks. The safety group, this is honestly a group that's pretty straightforward. Talanoa Hufanga, he's still recovering from his torn ACL. He won't be here right now. And so he's a guy who you're probably not gonna see for much of training camp. The expectation is he's gonna be back week 1. And so I'm not too worried about Talanoa Hufanga. With Hufanga out, George Odom, he got the start. He worked alongside Jair Brown. They were the number one safeties for the whole day. That was just the case. And so with the safeties, you kind of expect it's going to be George Odom, it's going to be Talanoa Hufanga, it's going to be Malik Mustafa, and then it's also going to be Jair Brown, who got the start today. And so that's kind of what I'm expecting. You probably expect Hufanga and Jair Brown to start, Odom and Mustafa to back him up. Speaking of Mustafa, a lot of people talked about him yesterday. Seems like he made a play yesterday, an interception. Well, today he also had a PBU. It was one of those floated passes. Mustafa was able to excuse me. Mustafa was able to break that up, though. It was a solid play earlier in the day. It was an errant throw from Brandon Allen. Mustafa had another PBU. He's a guy who it seems like can find a way to make plays on the ball. If he can continue to do that, it seems like he'll be ready sooner than later to potentially take over a starting spot, maybe give the 49ers more confidence that he can be their guy in 2025. But a good start to training camp for Malik Mustafa. But at safety, this is a group I'm not really looking too much at just because it seems like the starters are set, especially if Hufanga returns by week 1. And then the backups, you're expecting them to carry 4. Odom, obviously, your special teams ace. Mustafa, your young rookie. Those are the two guys that I expect to kind of also follow and kind of, join the fold here in 2024. Now, let's get into the comments. Can you talk about the signing? Not sure about what signing you're talking about. Make sure you drop that in the comments, and I'll be sure to bring it up. Other comments that I'm looking about. 49ers Throwback says Jake Brendel is the weak link on the O-line. Not sure if I'll go there, but right now he's the guy who's in the competition. At least that's what it appears about so far. Um, no catches for Kittle. Kittle didn't see much volume come his way. He did get a catch. He did kind of get. He got one opportunity. He had two targets. One was a catch. One was broken up by Charvarius Ward. Brandon Willis is the second best tight end on the team. True. Not sure. Like I said, with the tight end group, not enough volume today for me to really examine much about the group. Willis, though, he did do, he had the biggest catch of the day. I'll say that. Going down, do you think with Dobbs struggling, they'll actually give Mordecai some reps? I think that they're going to play this out. I think that they want to see, can Dobbs, it's only one day of practice. Can Dobbs bounce back? Does he look better, as training camp continues, as he gets more reps with the rest of the team? How does that kind of look? And then also, does Brandon Allen continue to play the way that he is? Obviously, he has the familiarity with with the playbook. I don't think that. I honestly don't know what their plan is at backup quarterback. I thought Mordecai would get reps, at least series here and there. That wasn't the case even at all. I think that Mordecai's got to get reps at some point, especially in the preseason. You'd want him to get reps before that. But I don't think it'll be because Dobbs is struggling. I think it's just naturally those reps should come. Drake Jackson didn't see too much from him, honestly. I think he was working with the third team defense if he was out there. Did not see too much out of him. Robert Beal, on the other hand, worked with the second team defense. He's a guy who I kind of mentioned earlier as a guy to watch because he, like I said, he's a younger guy, but he's working ahead of certain veterans that could be on the bubble to make the roster. Guys like Austin Bryant and things like that, where initially, usually the 49ers would have those veterans working over the younger guys, wait for the younger guys to take over. Beal's already ahead, so it kind of tells me that the 49ers view Beal as a guy they expect to make the roster. Burford, talked about him a little bit with the offensive line group. Starter right now at right guard. He got when he was on the field, it was with the first team offense at right guard. Seems like the 49ers are pretty confident in Spencer Burford so far. We'll see what changes with the right guard rotation, though, overall. Is it true Jordan Mason have a 5-yard loss today? Running game is really hard to dictate, this early in camp. There's no pads. So I don't really value the 5-yard loss, the 5-yard game. I don't really chart that at this stage just because there's no pads. You don't really know how these plays are going to go. The defense did blow up a good amount of runs, though. I'll say that. The defense did have a good day in the backfield, as expected. There's no Trent Williams. You're working against the number one defense. And so when Jordan Mason has reps with the top offense, might be tough. He had a couple of good plays, though. I thought he had one of the better runs of the day. I think he had a pretty solid day overall. And so seems like that is the majority of the questions. I believe I covered everything. If you guys, though, have more questions, obviously be sure to hit me up on Twitter. We'll be going live every day that the 49ers have training camp, so I'll be back tomorrow. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. This one was really fun. 40 minutes, broke down every single position group, what I saw from them today, what to expect going forward, answered all your questions. Thank you guys so much. We're going to make sure we continue to do this. I appreciate everybody who commented, who's staying on the stream. Appreciate all the support. And I guess we'll be back tomorrow.